welcome again, everyone, for Awaken Conversations. And here is Yolanda, a dear, dear friend of mine who, is definitely in the soulmate arena for me. And before we dive into our Awaken conversation today, I guess maybe all of it is Awaken conversation, but let's just riff for a minute about how we met and what that was like and feeling the connections that we've had, because that's what happens with some of these, even though I haven't seen you in person for years.
I know. I know. That's actually kind of crazy to think about, but yeah, I mean, it has to be true.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think of when I first met you. I met you when I was deep diving into curiosity about intuition.
Hmm.
And at that time, I had already been practicing Reiki for a few years, but when you first come into the realm of spirituality, no matter what is the door opener for you, then all of a sudden you're like a kid in a candy store. And so I had been doing so much research and trying to figure out how to further develop my intuition. And I kept hearing about the Akashic records. And it sounded strange, as most of this work does. And I didn't want to do anything other than something local at that time. And you came up. You had a healing studio that was only 30-minute drive away, and you were hosting someone was coming to do an Akashic Records class. I think it was a weekend long. And yeah, that was how I found you. And I fell in love with you in that class. And then I started taking the other things that you offered following that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
I remember that so clearly also. And I remember, the healing studio was quite small. Like if we were offering a class or an event, it was pretty cozy if we had 20 people in there.
Yeah.
10 to 15 was so it wasn't like it was a room of 60 or 70 or 80 people. And it was more like that, like, oh, I know you, even though I'm just meeting you for the first
Yes.
time, was how it was. And
Yes.
that kicked it off. And I know for myself over time, I don't remember exactly when it was. I just had this immediate knowing that we go back to Egypt.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that's where, at least in my memory of that soul experience, like we were, I would say, priestess initiates, or however you want to say that, together way back in the day. And so we've been traveling similar paths. So
Yes. No, 100%. And I would say too, one of the things that started happening for me back then is I was, again, looking for different classes, and whether I went to classes or whether it were the teachers or the people in the room, I started becoming very sensitive to who I felt comfortable around or who I trusted in my energy. And that was one of the things that really stood out about you at that time is I trusted you completely. And
ah,
so it wasn't just that I wanted to work with you, but feeling that connection, that resonance with you, and I trusted you. And so that was also a big deal for me. But yeah, I can't remember either the turning point where it was just like,
yeah.
I need you in my life beyond this
Yeah.
class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like years can go by and we talk like, all regularly. We go through
Right.
more frequent and less frequent times, but it's always like we just spoke yesterday. And most
Yeah.
of us have friends like that. And then even though I haven't physically seen you, I don't for years,
Yeah.
since I moved away from San Diego area,
I came
maybe.
to see you once.
Oh, that's right. I
Yes.
just remember that as soon as, and so that was maybe what, 5 years ago,
At
something like
least.
that.
Hmm.
And but it just feels like I saw you yesterday also. So
Yeah.
that's a fun kind of friendship. And I wanted to highlight this in the beginning also because I think a lot of us have friendships like that
Yeah.
you don't have to be sitting, sure, be fun to with tea every week and chat in person, but it's not required to have those deep soul friendships.
No, absolutely not. And it is funny because no matter how much time passes and we do speak, we will be on the phone for hours.
It's
And
so
it is,
true.
I mean, it's just like no time has passed at all, but hours will go by. And I think both of us just kind of go, oh my gosh, my phone is dying.
I know.
Something's happening. Like we got to go now. Yeah.
Well, I've often thought that, maybe we should talk more frequently so it doesn't go on for so long. And I thought, no, it still would.
100% it would. Yeah, and even thinking about this now over these years, because it's been a lot of years, I would say at least 2011, maybe 2011, 2012,
2011.
2011. Yeah, we've seen each other through a lot, I would say, uh, through relationships, personal growth, all kinds of things. And yeah, I really appreciate that you've been in my life through those experiences as well.
Yeah, I would say ditto to all of that too.
Yeah.
So, in terms of these awakened conversations, is there's so much talk about what the awakening is or our ascension process. And I think there's a lot of interpretations, a lot of expectations around it. And so my intention, as everyone would have heard in the intro, is to share all the different varieties of what does the awakening and ascension mean to you. So that's where I want to start with my question today. If somebody says something about the awakening or ascension, is it something that you even align with? And if so, you personally, not anyone else's thinking or teaching,
Yeah.
how is that sort of catalyzed in you?
Well, first of all, I have to say I'm glad it became more of a personalized understanding because at first, when I came into this realm and I heard people talk about it, and I think also the images that often go with the idea of ascension, um, it felt very much like we're all going to leave our bodies to go to these other realms and these other fields. And I was like, that doesn't really sound great to me. Like, I like being on Earth. So I'm not interested in that. But now, personally, what I understand is it feels like these stages of just awakening in consciousness, I would say. And this process of whatever it is that you may practice or study, you start to have these realizations and these understandings that we are more than what we may have been taught, but also that the world or existence itself is much broader than what we've been taught. And so you start to just have this more expansive awareness of what this world is that we live in and what
Mhm.
our relationship to that is. And then also the different layers of, well, what is our relationship to a higher intelligence? What's our relationship to ourselves, to the people in our lives, to Earth, all of these things. So for me, the awakening process has come in stages.
Mhm.
I'm not someone that had like a lightning bolt experience where that has not happened to me. Um, but I also appreciate that, quite honestly, because each time we have these moments of aha or these moments of awareness, no matter what they look like, there's also some sort of acclamation that has to go along with that. And also this process of acceptance that has to go along with that. So, yeah, I think it's definitely a process of gaining a wider perspective of what life is and what we are.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. I love what you're saying also about this acclamation. Because the people I work with often they feel like they're on a forced march, like
Mhm.
somebody's nipping at their heels and I need to keep going and I need to go faster and I need to make sure I ascend in this lifetime. And the reality is that when we do these, whether it's an upgrade or an expansion or a shift in awareness, understanding whether it's in ourselves or our relationship to the world, I feel like we do need to integrate with it. We need to
Right.
give ourselves a minute. I love to say that, like, we need a minute. And it's
Right.
also okay to not always feel like you're churning the ether, to allow yourself to adapt and reorient and feel, because it changes our relationship to everything, ourself,
Mhm.
what we're doing in the world, the people we're interacting with, and even just our foundational beliefs and expectations about life itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even our interest in, I hope it's okay to say this. If not, I don't know, cut it out.
Anything is okay
Anything's okay.
here, as
But
far as I'm
even
concerned.
just, I mean, down to things you probably wouldn't even think about you would change. Like, for example, I mean, even I'll frame it as attraction, right? So I think I used to have more of a carnal kind of like, ooh, I want to, my attraction was very carnal based. And
Mm-hmm.
as I started going through this work, that was not interesting to me at all. And I didn't understand that at first. Like, what is this? Like, I need to connect with people in a different way. So whether it
Mm-hmm.
was romantic friendship, no matter what it was, even though the type of connection that I started to want or even need really really started to change a lot. So yeah, there's a lot of nuance in this awakening process that I don't think there's a guidebook for it. I don't know, maybe you know of one, but just like a lot
Well,
of interesting things that you couldn't even plan for may start to change.
right. And I think part of it is a change in consciousness. So it's so vast that really even us and our 3D awareness can't really grok all.
Yeah,
And without it sounding like a spiritual cliche, the truth is we're all at a different point in our journey.
right.
And so there isn't a guidebook for it, except I think a lot of how is it helping you know yourself better in relation to your life. And I like to think of our awakening also just from our human 3D level, not going into all the multidimensional aspects of it, is how is your life improving? How are you trusting yourself more, feeling better about yourself, leaning more into self-love? How are you approaching life in a way that just feels like I'm making some progress? Like it
Yes.
doesn't need to look like all, I mean, I believe our awakening is anchored right here. So
Mhm.
we can hear all these lofty ideas about what it's like and the stages you need to go through, but the foundation of it is that we should be seeing and feeling and experiencing a deeper, better understanding of ourselves. It doesn't mean life gets easier, but
Right.
I necessarily, but I think we can bring a new level of intelligence and understanding and awareness to everything that's happening that makes it all feel like we're more resilient with the ups and downs and highs and lows in 3D.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, the way that was one of the first things I started to notice, and which even kept me interested in this work, quite frankly, was starting to notice the way my perspective was shifting around a lot of different things in my life, but also having new awareness about myself. So behaviors and patterns that before I would have just said, that's just who I am. Like I didn't see any need to grow or change or something like this. But then starting to understand and really recognize how I would respond or react to different things, different people, different situations, but also having this awareness of like, whoa, where does that come from? You know,
Mhm.
why am I responding to anything in the way that I do? But a lot of self awareness started to happen, but it was without judgment. And I think that was the big part. It was
Beautiful.
more of just like a curiosity and having this compassion for myself of like, wow, I get why you ended up here. I understand why you did things this way. But more than that, it gave me more compassion for other people in my life. Like, for example, my relationship with my mom was very, she drove me nuts. So now, with the way that I see things, I have even more compassion for her as a human, not just as the role of my mother, but just a woman on this planet who has lived life too. And so it has changed a lot around how I understand things, how I understand people, how forgiving I can be, how willing to change I am in a lot of ways. But another thing that comes up when you say that, Holly, is the whole empath thing because it's used a lot. And I think a lot of people say it either as like a badge of honor, which there's nothing wrong, it's fine. But then also it feels almost like this kind of martyr, like, oh, woe is me. I'm so sensitive, you know? And I was like, what is this about? So I started recognizing in hindsight that I was always very sensitive to energy, but I didn't see it as, I didn't know there was a title for it. It
Mm,
was that thing that made me the weird friend who didn't want to go to certain places or didn't like certain people, and I didn't have a logical explanation as to why, right?
right.
And so it was very isolating. But then when I started in this work and started to understand more of energy and not just that we can manage our own, but we're interacting with energy all the time. So we're going to feel each other, we're going to feel environments. And instead of just thinking someone has bad energy, maybe what you're picking up on is their fear or their insecurity, or, there could be so many things. So once I started to understand all of that, I was fascinated by how much interaction we have with how we experience this life. And
So
again,
true.
what we're even capable of.
Right.
So I always think of, hopefully anyone that has that sensitivity is more curious about coming empowered
Mhm.
in their empathic nature, rather than feeling like it's something that makes you want to hide from the world, because it doesn't have to be that way. And that was a big thing for me.
Right. I agree with you. I feel like we've been at this intersectional time with people identifying themselves as empaths,
Mhm.
and that back in the day, it may not have been understood or well regarded. And I mean by back in the day, still in my lifetime,
Yeah.
not like 100 years ago.
Yeah.
But that idea that, like, okay, I am sensitive and it does feel handicapping. It
Mm-hmm.
does feel isolating, to your point. It does feel segregating. Like
Yes.
I can't be or do like everyone else, or I go to a party and I've got to rest for the next 3 days or whatever it
Yeah.
might be. But learning to understand why it impacts you to that
Right.
degree, and then feeling also that you have a choice around it. Because I think you touched on this, is like there's been this disempowering thing of like, oh, this is who I am, as if it's a handicap.
Mhm.
But really recognizing, well, what do I want to choose? Because if we were raised with the awareness that, oh, you're a highly sensitive person, and what it means is you're going to be taking in data differently than a lot of people from the world
Yeah.
around you. And here's how to manage it. Here's
Mhm.
how to work with it. And also, I think a key is for those of us who are highly sensitive people, I can raise my hand to that as well, is that really understanding that a lot of what we're feeling, it's not even ours. And
Right.
so even learning that distinction of like, oh, I feel totally overwhelmed, or I'm feeling this, that, or like, so I have to remove myself. But even being given the awareness that you have energy in your field that isn't yours, let's teach you how to let go of it and
Mhm.
discern it and let go of it. And then you're just left to deal with what's yours and not trying to process everyone and everything else that isn't even yours to deal with.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
was one of the hugest things. Oh, many, many years ago, I was in this class, and this woman, I don't even remember what the class was about, but it was around spiritual teaching. And it was, oh, so long ago, 20 years or more ago. And she said, is this mine to do?
Mm.
And that little nugget and variants of it have stuck with me basically ever since that moment of like, when we start, because we take things on, also because as empaths, we care so much, don't we? Have such big
Yes.
hearts, and taking it on, and it's like, you don't need to take it on and process all of it. And that simple question of, is this mine to do, or is this mine to do, like process everything I'm feeling, is it really mine? And learning that, it's so freeing.
Oh, 100%. I think the biggest hurdle with that is not the starting to recognize how to sense or know what is yours and what isn't. I think a lot of people grapple more with the not feeling selfish because of how that's been so ingrained in us, as if like we're supposed to put everyone and everything before ourselves. And so now, how could I see someone hurt and not match that and fall apart with them, or else I'll seem like I don't care. And it's really interesting how much a lot of this work, the difficulty, I think, more than anything, is the changing of our minds and the
Ah,
stories that are so deeply ingrained in us. Yeah.
yeah.
And putting yourself first or caring for yourself isn't a bad thing.
Oh, no. And actually, it's essential because
Yeah.
nobody can care more about us than we care about ourselves.
Right.
Meaning, and that's about that law of attraction and matching vibration. People love us, see us, support us, anything that we desire, literally to a matching degree that we do that for ourselves.
Right.
So us understanding ourselves and being able to give and nurture to ourselves the way that we would like to support other people, it really starts with us. It's not us
Yes.
giving more. If I give more, therefore somebody will finally see me. It's like, no, create that magnetic vortex of that for yourself. And then you literally have more to give, right?
Yes.
So I think some of what we're talking about sort it blends into my second question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, just to hear if there's more you'd like to share around this. And this idea of your awakening and ascension that you've already shared, how does that thought idea, and I think of it as a vibrational experience, how does that impact your day-to-day life with yourself, with your clients, with your students, with the people you interview, like all that you do? How does it inform what motivates you through every single day?
Yeah, well, that's changed. I think it's gone through stages and continual, I guess it matches where I am in my life. But I think of when I was first going through this process of a cracking open, and it felt like this ascension was really like I called it in the beginning, I felt like I was becoming spiritually undone. So
Mhm.
in that cycle of it, I was hyper aware of my feelings, whether emotionally or physically. And I had to learn to be okay with saying no. I had to learn to be okay with I can't do everything all the time, and give a lot of attention and care to myself. And then
Mhm.
as I started to grow out of that particular cycle, it started to change the way that I was in relationship with people around me. So instead of, again, being that person who wanted to avoid strangers and not really share space with anybody other than, my select group of friends and things like that, all of that started becoming like a challenge I was posed with. Like, well, what are you going to do now here? So, for example, the podcast, I would have never, ever thought to do something like that. And when it became an idea, I was terrified. But I knew that showing up and sharing with people was more important to me than that particular fear. So I
Mhm.
did it anyway. Whereas
Awesome.
before I would have made an excuse not to, right? So there
Right.
was a whole other phase of where am I going to allow change? And the changes I allowed started changing my life. I mean, I started
Yeah.
meeting people that I probably would have never met otherwise. I gave myself exposure to experiences I wouldn't have given to myself otherwise. And so I really think there's different looks or iterations of what the awakening process may present us with.
Yeah.
Um, Over the years, I'd say the greatest influence it has on me is watching my mouth. Really, truly, like being very, very mindful and accountable and honest with myself about what I'm feeling and what I'm triggered and how I'm choosing to respond. Um, Not blaming other people for my actions, my feelings, any of that. I definitely have become better at having mature conversation, being more mature with myself, even in an emotional way, and having more of a awareness of what's going on around me. So whereas before I would be not present, those moments where you drive from one place to home and you have no idea how you got there, it just was autopilot,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
now I take the time to consciously pay attention to what are my surroundings and who are the people that are around me. And I'm consciously aware of what I'm thinking of a person when I'm looking at them. So there's
Wow.
just so much more mindfulness that has
Yeah.
come into how I function. And that makes a complete difference in how I show up in every area of my life.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. And I feel like a lot of what you're saying just in this, I mean, because obviously you could probably talk about the answer to the question I just asked for quite a while, but what it feels like is for you at this moment, there's like this spiritual and emotional maturity that has really grown through this process for you that's informing how you're doing things.
Right.
And just even like you're saying, being more present for me, my mind immediately goes to this idea that for us to be fully present with people, we have to be pretty present with ourselves. Because if we're distracted by our old wounds and our triggers, and we're emotionally in that place, and it's hard to be present. So
Yeah.
kudos to you for that level of healing and self-awareness presence that you can have, that you can also be present for other people, because that that's a big deal. That's
Yeah.
a big deal, because I mean, because I feel personally like that emotional maturity and everything you talked about does come with that more healed presence that we are evolving into. We don't have to
Yes.
get there on a dime, but that as we feel more comfortable with ourselves, we are more comfortable with life. I feel that's a side effect of our awakening and our
Oh,
ascension.
100%. And it's funny listening to you say that the feeling of escapism comes to mind. We're on the other side of that coin when we're not comfortable with being present and just being still with ourselves. There's a lot of attempt to escape situation, escape feeling, escape, and then your mind goes wild trying to deflect and defend and all of
Right.
these other modes you will go into instead of just sitting and accepting and being okay with, so to speak, whatever is in the moment. So yeah, it's much more calming. And that's a thing that came to my recognition too. Once I started to recognize that I was starting to feel peace in my body, I thought I like broke myself because I was like, oh my God, wait, am I okay? I'm not feeling any kind of extreme. It was this one particular day I'll never forget. I really thought like I broke something in my function. And then I finally realized, like, oh, this is what peace feels like. And then it
Wow.
was a thing of like, do I like this feeling? Because it was
Yeah.
so foreign to me. And then in doing, meditation and breathing exercises, recognizing how much tension we carry in the body. And then once you start to recognize that and you do practices to release it, then it's like, you're hyper aware when tension starts to arise. And I'm like, oh no. So even that feeling of peace in body and mind have contributed a lot to what I prioritize in terms of how I handle things and how I choose to handle me and who I even will interact with in my life.
Mm.
Yeah. So peace has also been a driving force in how I like to handle things now.
Right. I love that. I love everything you said. It's just so there's grace in it.
Yeah.
And really a lot of hope, right? Like, and what I love about it is it's so embodied what you're talking about, in that it's not about when I get to be a 5D consciousness, when I
Right.
get to some other vibrational reality, then I get the goodies. You're talking about it in a different way than I would talk about it. It's like, this awakening is here for us to actually have a different lived experience that we don't have to wait for.
Right. Yeah.
And we can see the proof in the pudding.
And to the point of what you said earlier, it doesn't necessarily mean life is easier, but we do become more resilient. And again, there's a difference in how you perceive what you're going through. So, like, yes, of course, listen, over these years of doing this work, I don't think it's necessarily that life got harder as much as I've become more aware of what's going on in my life. And so for a lot of people, and they feel like, oh, everything feels harder or this dark night of the soul and these things, life is going to give us shift and change anyway. But I think we just become more aware of what it feels like, what it looks like, what is really coming up that before we may have avoided, but now we're sitting and looking at, right? And so yeah, it's not always easy and that it's not always this like peaceful day. I enjoy feeling peace, but I'm also okay with when I don't. Like,
Yeah.
like I was really pissed off just 2 days ago. But I had the awareness in the moment of like, I'm really pissed off and I'm okay with that. And I'm going
Right.
to sit with this feeling and I'm going to observe all of it. I'm going to observe how it feels in my body, what my story is around it. I'm not going to, blame this again on anyone else. Just it brought me into this different kind of curiosity. So then I became more accountable to how I self-regulate. But
Yeah.
I just wanted to make clear me saying I love my peace. It doesn't mean that I don't have moments where I want to scream.
E- Absolutely, because we still are in a dimension of polarity
Hmm.
and a dimension of duality. There will always be highs, lows, ups and downs, easy, hards.
Yeah.
There is part of this larger ascension and awakening consciousness, almost like we need to eradicate that. But I feel like when we understand the value of the 3D, the energies in 3D, polarity, duality, that and I know this can trigger people, but it's all here for our growth. It's all here for our benefit. So, to your point, when you sit with being pissed off on a given day and
Yeah.
say, I'm going to let myself feel it, it's okay, rather than you weren't saying, what's wrong with me or what's wrong with them. And if I'm ever having a less than ideal day, then I've done something wrong. That's kind of an overlay of something else that's in collective consciousness of
Right.
which that's a whole nother conversation we could go into of
Yeah.
just this idea that I'm inherently flawed and I'm not okay. And I only have evidence that when everything's perfect and happy and easy and all that, then I'm okay. It's like, but who are we becoming in all those gritty moments?
Hmm.
Because all those gritty, hard, dark night of the soul moments are where we're breaking open to something new.
Yeah.
When our
Yeah.
back is up against the wall, that's where the rubber hits the road, but where we say, I need something else. I need a different resource. I need to have a new point of view. It's breaking us open to discover something new about us that we
Yeah.
don't tend to do in those easier moments.
I mean, I literally was just thinking about this the other day, Holly. It's funny you say, I was thinking about, I had this experience in my 40s. I won't say which year exactly, but in my 40s. I would say it was like one of the most heartbreaking experiences I ever felt. Right. And I know that sounds kind of later in life to have that, but that happens when it happens.
Yeah,
But I really appreciated it, even though it felt like my whole heart was falling out of my body. I really appreciated it because in the moment I knew that there was something like it was changing me. It was really, really changing me. And while I couldn't fully appreciate it in the moment, I knew that's something was happening. And this came into my awareness just a few days ago. And this happened years ago. And I thought, like, wow, it's amazing the way that situation, as hurtful as it was in the moment, it really forced me to take ownership of where I had given myself away before.
oh,
It
beautiful.
really slammed me into
Yeah,
how much of yourself are you going to give away and when are you going to reclaim you and when are you going to love yourself differently. Like, it presented a lot of tough but necessary questions to me, even though it felt like, again, it felt like hell, but it was
yeah,
one of the greatest gifts. And it's very interesting, the shift that not just happened in my awareness and in my understanding of even the intelligence of love. I mean, there were so many lessons that were wrapped up in this one
yeah,
circumstance. And on the other side of, kind of working through the layers, then some other incredible things happened that I knew were a result of going through that.
yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and it goes back to this idea that all those things catalyzed who we are today.
Right.
In our greatness, and sure, maybe we're still we're always going to have things to work through,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of good stuff that gets catalyzed in those darker moments. Not long ago, I was guided in my Akashic records. As you know, I do a lot of work in there all the time.
Yes.
And um, it was something new. It was like a variant of something that I've explored before, but it was different. What I was guided to do by my soul guidance team and my records is go back to as many things as I could remember. And I did this a little bit over multiple days. This wasn't all in one shot of where were those challenging moments from very early childhood and moving forward. And I just went in my records, I just remembered whatever I could remember.
Yeah.
And what I was guided to say is, what did you become through that? Who did you become? What new energy came forward? What was a resource that you developed? What was a deeper level of understanding? Basically, a simple way of saying that would be, what was the gift in that? Even though, and it's not like glossing over, like, yeah, some of
Right.
it was hard as hell.
Yeah.
Some of what happened in my childhood, I didn't even realize until I was an adult. These memories started bubbling up, which I know happens for a lot of people. And you go through a period of feeling victimized by it and bad when you see how that impacted your life. But what did it catalyze? And it was a beautiful experience because I saw how every single time new parts of me came out in really good ways. And there was a theme, at least in the first two that I am willing to share here, is this idea of a theme of courageousness
Yeah.
that like it all had its little different looks, but there was a theme of courageousness that I've had to cultivate in this lifetime through all these things. And I had never, as much work as I had done, and this was just in the last few months, I had never seen that thread and that theme. And when I allowed myself to see it, it just like, whoa, I actually have, instead of focusing on, oh, these challenges and they made me who I am, it's like, but through that, you've become extremely courageous.
Yes.
And that's what's available to us, similar to what you're saying there.
Yeah, no, 100%. You just reminded me of two. I'm not going to go into it, but tarot, this is why I fell in love with tarot because of the major arcana specifically. So there's a section of the deck of tarot where there's minor arcana and major arcana. But the major arcana goes through these 22 cards that are called the Fool's Journey. And essentially, it tells the story through 22 cards of what it's like going through a spiritual awakening, like really what this journey is like. And it's not linear. I mean, the journey of the fool definitely has its ups and downs, but there are these three cards in sequence that are kind of in the middle of the journey. And they're two of those cards are two that people fear the most, but they're really two of the greatest gifts to be aware of, right? So you have the devil, the tower. Those are the two that people fear. But then on the other side of that is the star, which is one of the greatest gifts within the story of the deck. But prior to getting to that wisdom of the star and the essence of this hope and this clarity and just so much understanding, two of the most challenging cards came before that. And
Mm,
with the devil, I always think of how people have such an adverse reaction to that card, obviously, because, who the character is on the card. But it's really about our own attachment to our stories, our patterns, our ideas, our addictions, whatever those things may be, that keep us bound. But we're only bound because we are choosing to live in the illusion of whatever it may be. And then on the other side of that is this tower card that, think of it as like where the universe strikes you like with a bolt of lightning to free you from that which you couldn't free yourself from. So
mm,
while the tower could be so uncomfortable and disorienting, sometimes we need that push to help us in ways we couldn't help ourselves, right? So
yeah,
again, these two cards that are so extreme and can be very uncomfortable, and I can see why people want to avoid them, but they're really the only way to get over to the star, you know?
exactly,
Yeah. And
exactly.
there's so much of this journey that brings those kinds of situations up for us.
And I think us even shifting our everyday thinking or expectation that even when things are challenging, it's not that there's something we did wrong, there's something we're going to be breaking through to.
Yes. Exactly that.
Like, and approaching it from that way of like, who am I becoming through this?
Hmm.
What's the next iteration of myself that's going to be better than before as I'm navigating the challenge really adjusts how we process everything within that moment.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so question number three is
Okay.
so what so overarching, what's your vision for humanity or the planet or consciousness at this time? What's your vision for it?
Like present time or what I'm hoping we're going to go into. I
It's
honestly,
just like to me, the vision is like a pole star or a North Star. Like,
okay.
what do you, the vision of like what is possible during this time, whether we see it evidenced in the world or not?
Yes, I think we definitely are seeing, in a lot of ways collectively the way that we are being drawn to something other, whether there's more of a awareness around complementary medicines, and there are more people interested in alternative arts or, exactly what we're talking about, the realm of spirituality. There are so many people who are questioning life, world, what this all is, what it all means. And underneath it all, a lot of people are just wanting more truth, like
Mhm.
really wanting more truth, really wanting more peace, really wanting more understanding. And yeah. And even with the things that happen in the world, like as you know, being in North Carolina, in a lot of the devastation that we see, there's also that other side where you see this uprise of like so much compassion and humanity where people want to help and again show up for
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah.
So I think there's this in our realm of duality, we're
Mhm.
seeing a lot of the shadow that has been coming up, a
Yeah.
lot that hasn't been dealt with for who knows, hundreds of years. There's so much about what we have built society on. So I think there's this, we were communal and more connection to earth at some time.
Yeah.
And then for whatever reason, we kind of grew away from that and we became more competitive and more um, just different in what society meant and what roles meant and what gender meant and all of these different things. And, you know, as you said even a moment ago, I think collectively we learned through that shift and that change. And now it seems like the pendulum is swinging the other way. So right now I feel like we're kind of in this extreme of trying to push a pendulum to the whole other end
Yeah.
of a spectrum. What I'm hoping is that at some point the pendulum will find its center. And I honestly I don't think that'll necessarily be in our lifetime, but I'm excited by the idea that we get to be a part of this huge collective shift and change that is happening. And when we come back reincarnated, that hopefully we will be in a space collectively where we have all evolved to a degree where this is more of the norm, being more caring, compassionate, more communal, more
Right.
whatever is the highest version of our expression. So, I think it's interesting to witness what we're going through in terms of a collective healing process and cycle. And yeah, it's actually kind of fascinating to me, but I hope what it's leading to is when we come back, we'll be in a better space.
Yeah, no, I,
Yeah,
I agree with you completely. And living and being here during, I mean, this puts a timestamp on this interview, but just Hurricane Helene in Western North Carolina, I did see so much in media and some well-meaning friends tried to share some things with me about more nefarious things that were happening and the causes of it. And that's not what I witnessed at all.
right,
And sure, of course, that there's some challenging things, and there are a lot of people, more of the challenges, the degree of loss and devastation and trauma that people have experienced. It's really profound and it's palpable in this area. Now, I'm sitting in my home and I'm fine. And I could go a few blocks away and people aren't fine. I
right,
could go 30 minutes away. People really aren't fine.
right.
And Yet what I've seen as an overarching theme, which has been for me something so exquisite to witness, is the kindness and the care and the humanity, that it doesn't matter what political affiliation, what socioeconomic level, whether you liked your neighbor or not,
Right.
the love and the care and the kindness has been cracked open here. So while there's this palpable trauma that we're all experiencing, and people, I mean, you can feel it in the air. There's also what's breaking open is a deep place of humanity that for me, I don't like, this is possible, but like it's a lived experience for me now. And so when we see it, witness it, we know that that energy is possible. And so now what we can do is look for more of it. Like, how do I find
Yes.
more of that? Because it's always around us. It's just a question of what are we choosing to look at and focus on. And so it's been a beautiful experience in that regard of seeing how humanity is still really elegant and exquisite and beautiful in that way.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're making me think of two, you know, that I don't, yeah, I'll say primarily practice Reiki. I met this woman who she does Reiki in Chicago, but she has put together this group that goes very specifically to work with Chicago Police Department. And they go, I
Mm,
believe, every weekend and volunteer and offer free Reiki to the officers. And the
beautiful.
officers have been so appreciative of, you know, because it's calming and it helps, you know, release tension and all of these things. But even seeing the ways that people are using all of these different practices, whether it's Reiki, meditation, you know, bringing mindfulness into corporate environments, or some people in some places are able to bring these mindfulness practices into schools. And now
Mhm.
children are starting to learn to meditate in these things. Even that, when you think about that in our world and this in our lifetime, is pretty incredible when you think about, say, maybe in the 80s, like you would have to like dig under a rock and go under a tunnel to even find a book about anything, right? And
Right.
I remember it was just maybe 10 years ago that you would go in a Barnes and Noble, like a popular bookstore. Crazy that any still exist really, but go into a bookstore and there's a whole section of tarot cards and a
Mhm.
whole section of books on, you know, mysticism and all kinds of practices. I mean, it's
Right.
just wild that in just our lifetime, so
Yeah.
much has changed. So
Yeah,
I
you don't have to
definitely,
always go to the underground bookstore.
right,
Right.
exactly. Yes. Yeah. And so, I mean, just saying that is, I think, says a lot of how we are shifting and changing collectively.
Yeah, I
That
agree.
these energetic options are now available in hospitals and hospice, just so many things. So now you
Absolutely.
just got me excited, Holly. That's, yes, I see us changing collectively. I think we're
Yeah.
going in a good direction.
So my final question for you, again, you've sort of touched on it anyway, but I'm going to ask it anyway. If you could share one thing, one nugget that that's going out, transmitted to the planet, if, envisioning that transmission out at this moment in time in our awakening, what would it be? What's one thing?
Love anyway. That's
Beautiful.
one of the greatest lessons I've learned. Love anyway. When you see people, you want to judge them, you want to be angry, all the things. Love anyway. And you can dissect that and interpret it however you like. But
Yeah,
yeah.
I love that. That's beautiful. And that is such a beautiful way for us to wrap this up. Thank you so much for being part of the Awaken Conversations, because I think this is important
Yes.
for us to find our people and magnify our light. And so love anyway is such a beautiful way to end. Thank you so much for being part of this, Yolanda. I love you so much.
Thank you for having me. I love you more. Bye.
Bye.